Welcome to this week's episode of Being Bookish. I'm your host Ray, self-confessed bookworm, introvert, hermit, long-term depression sufferer and ex-coffee addict. I really don't get tired of saying that, funnily enough, though occasionally I really do fancy a cup of coffee. As you may be able to tell, this is different to my usual episodes, so let's get straight to the content you're here for. Join me and my guest, author Veronica Henry, as we talk about her fantastic 2023 release, 30 Days in Paris, and everything from being an au pair to travelling in Paris and the importance of self-discovery. And I am here with Veronica Henry to talk about her latest novel. The novel is 30 Days in Paris. Now, it is a really lovely novel, and I'm not, as you know, this is a spoiler-free podcast. So would you like to tell those who haven't read the book about the story and the characters that you created?
Of course, yes. Thank you for having me, by the way, firstly.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
So 30 Days in Paris is about 30 Days in Paris. It's basically about Juliet, who's 50-something. She has amicably separated from her husband. They were just kind of drifting apart and decided that they wanted to go their separate ways. And she decides to rent an apartment in Paris for 30 days and rediscover her 20-year-old self. And the book is in two timelines. So when Juliet was 20, she went to Paris as an au pair, fell head over heels in love with the city, and also with someone. But it all went a bit wrong and she had to leave under a cloud, and has never been back. But she has always wondered about her sort of 20-year-old self and how she might have been had she stayed. So she thinks, right, I'm going to go back to Paris. She's also writing a novel because she's a ghostwriter by trade, but wants to write something with her own name on the front. So she is using her story, her au pair story, as the basis of her novel. So she rents her little apartment and there we have it. See what happens.
That's the thing I loved about it. When you talk about her arriving in I mean, the start of it where obviously they're packing up their home
Mhm.
and she says how her husband seems so detached from it already.
Mm.
I found that very interesting, especially when you consider that she still has that tie to her husband and she's still very close to him.
Yeah,
When you see so many books have this resentment, the acrimonious divorce, and that's the reason they decide to move on. You've given Juliet this friendly relationship with Stuart. There's no animosity, there's no, oh, you're leaving me for somebody else. It's that acceptance. So it gives her the strength to go back to a time that was in some ways quite painful for her.
absolutely. Yeah, I didn't want the book to be clouded by separation, divorce, and all the pain of that. That's not what it was about for me. For me, it was very much about her sort of renaissance, if you like, if that
Yes.
doesn't sound too pretentious.
Not
And I
at
want
all.
to be joyful and uplifting and not kind of tainted, really. So I kind of worked really hard on that. And I think I do know quite a few people who've just sort of, it's not that they don't love each other anymore. It's just that they're not living their best lives together anymore. And they both have very different interests. So kind of wanted to reflect that too. Um, which yeah, I mean, it was still interesting because she still, it's about divided loyalties as well, and still questioning whether you've done the right thing. And I found that a more interesting story than some sort of horrible, divorce court. I'll see you in court
Oh,
scenario.
there are so many of those, you read them and it's like it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever been on social media when they've got all of those adverts and every single one of the adverts for a game is your boyfriend, you found your husband is cheating on you, you've just had a baby. Are you going to stay or are you going to leave? And it's like, hang on a second, this is a game.
Oh my goodness, I haven't seen those. No, I'm obviously not in the right demographic for that. But gosh, yeah, I mean,
I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm in the right demographic either. I just still keep on seeing them.
yeah, Yeah, I just wanted to write something uplifting, I think, but also real, not just sort of sugary. So there are dilemmas for her. There are choices for her to make. There is sort of a tinge of regret every now and again, and a need to kind of be brave. So she is tested, but not traumatized by it. And
No, but that's the thing, she's taking a step. Not only, I mean, she's revisiting a moment in her past that obviously she
yes,
does have sadness. There are moments of not regret so much as that feeling of, well, if I'd done something differently, maybe this would have happened, or you don't, obviously I'm not going to spoil it,
no,
but
no.
there is that moment where you sort of sit there and go, as a reader, oh my God, that's horrible.
Yeah, I think for me it's about, I think at the time when she was 20 and the situation she is was in and the events that occurred, she wasn't in control. She didn't feel in control. She was a stranger in a city where she didn't really speak the language. She was very much out of her depth, very naive. And I think 50-year-old Juliet goes back and goes, right,
I loved
I'm
how
in
she took
control
charge.
this time.
I really did love how she took charge
Mm.
when she stepped back and confronted the person who was responsible and had her say. I was sitting there thinking, "Yes, this is what everybody I think this is what everybody wants to do. They want to confront the bully."
Yeah,
And in
exactly.
a way, I mean, he was a bully. He was also in a position of control and power over
Yeah.
her. So, I mean, that's the thing I found very interesting, having been an au pair myself. My
Yes.
situation was nowhere near as, glamorous. I wasn't in Paris, so I was in a tiny town in the sort of at the bottom of a mountain range bordering on Italy and Yugoslavia, as it
Yeah,
was
that
at that
sounds
time,
pretty
in Austria.
gorgeous.
So but I also didn't speak the language, and I
Yes,
was
you're very vulnerable.
and you just and I think that's the thing, I could identify with Juliet at that point. I
Yeah,
looked at her and I thought, "This is familiar." I did feel that way. I was thousands of miles from home. I think it was about 1,500. I was on my own. I didn't speak the language, and had I wanted to go home at that point, it wouldn't have been easy.
no, and this was set, I think, 30 years ago, and of course, in those days there was no internet. You barely even used the telephone very much in those days. You might, if it was an extreme emergency, um, phone home, but other than that, you were pretty much cut off, and also you had no way of finding people.
No,
So
as as we discover when Juliet goes on a date and she stood up,
mm,
but she
exactly.
wasn't really stood up.
No,
It was
exactly. There was
just
no
she got the address
communication.
wrong.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was a very, very different time and a very different, very different way of living. And I
Yes,
really
'cause
enjoyed going back and thinking, oh my God, how did we cope? How did
that's
we
the thing,
cope?
we always say life was simpler. I mean, I was over in Austria in 1992.
Mm.
So you think, "Oh, well, I had a scheduled time for phoning my mum on a Saturday morning,
Yep.
and if I missed that time slot, there wasn't another one until the following Saturday because phone calls were expensive."
Yeah.
So and there was no way of, if you wanted to find out where someone lived or what their phone number was, you had to have more than a tiny bit of information about them.
It would prove impossible, really. So yeah, that was kind of interesting, reflecting all of that and um, traveling back in time and thinking, how can I make this story work? Because it's logistically tricky when you don't have mobile phones for characters,
Oh,
so they start
absolutely.
phoning each other up.
But that's what gave it there was that obvious that feeling of nostalgia,
Mm,
because especially if you're reading it as someone who is a similar age to the character, you've
yes.
got that way of identifying. I remember feeling that way. I remember not being able to just pick up my mobile phone and scroll through the numbers to find somebody. And when you met up with people, it was so prearranged.
Oh my God, yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Or you were just very spontaneous and just kind of went with whatever was going on around you.
Yeah, I think I horrified a friend one day when I said, I told her that when we used to go clubbing when I was living in Austria, to get home, because we lived in such an out of the way place, there were trains that ran, but they only ran to the next nearest town, which was still 25 minutes away from where I lived. We'd go up to strangers, me and my friend would just go up to complete strangers in the bar and say, "Hey, do you live in St. Fate?"
No.
And get a lift, yes, and get lifts home with them.
Oh,
And this, it sounds weird, but this book reminded me so much of all the almost carefree, careless things we did.
the bravado and the
Yeah,
risk taking. Oh,
an
well,
18-year-old girl, I'd literally just walk up to someone and go, "Hey, wohnst du in der Nähe von St. Veit? Can you give me a
crikey.
lift?"
Crikey. Well, that slightly makes my blood run cold, but yeah, tell the tale.
But that was kind of what Juliet was doing. She was in a strange country. She met, obviously she made friends there with,
Mm.
she had Natalie, who was a fantastic character. She was so vibrant.
Yeah, I loved Natalie. She was a little force of nature and is kind of living my dream really. So she was Juliet's great friend when they met as 20-year-olds and was sort of, pushing her to wear sort of more Parisian clothes and just taking her to all the clubs and that she's that friend that you need that's going to push you out of your comfort zone. And
Oh,
then
absolutely.
30 years later they reconnect and Natalie's just running this really cool bar and just has got it got it all
Yeah,
going on.
Natalie is living the life that she always wanted to live,
Mm.
and in some way it's very much a contrast to Juliet.
Yes, totally. I mean, Juliet kind of had the family and was working from home and was all things to all people. That whole sort of thing when you feel you're spread rather too thinly amongst your loved ones. Whereas Natalie's like, nope, it's just all about me and what I want to do.
She
Um,
did everything. She took life by the horns and the bull by the horns
yeah,
and just went for it.
you
But
did.
that's how her character came across from the very start, with the "I'm gonna go for it, I'm gonna do what I want."
Yeah.
And then obviously she was given the means to do it. But
Yes.
when she meets up with Juliet again, there's a certain sadness to her, while there's also
Yeah. I
joy
think
in
there
what
is.
she's got.
I think we're always wistful about what we could have had and what could have happened. And that's a little bit about the theme of the book in a way. Um, yeah, just sort of the path you choose to take. Is it the right one? I suppose.
But that's the thing, I mean, Judith, obviously, though she has those regrets, what would have happened if I'd stayed and everything else, she's not unhappy with what she's got. She's got 2 children that she loves, she's got a good relationship with her ex-husband, and she's got the chance to start over.
Yeah, and I think it's just about her resetting really, and just making sure that she's driving the bus through the next 20 years, which
Oh,
she
that's
does, which she
yeah.
completely does.
I mean, she gets the dream, the Garrett, it sounds so weird,
Don't,
but
don't spoil it.
I can remember being a teenager or someone in my early 20s and saying, "I want to live in a garret flat in Paris." I
Absolutely.
don't know why, but that's what I wanted, and I can't remember if it's because I saw it in a film or a TV program or something, but there was this romantic ideal that a Paris garret flat would be the perfect life.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I think it's a kind of not Parisian cliche exactly, but they call them the chambre de bon, which is the maid's room, which is the little attic room that's kind of right stuffed into the eaves of, so they haven't got a proper ceiling, it's all just
Yeah,
on an angle. A bit like in Emily in Paris, actually. I think they live in a chambre de bon. And of course now they're hugely expensive and
yeah, of
hugely
course.
desirable. You can't just pick them up for nothing. And I actually rented one when I went to research the book, and that was just fantastic. I mean, it really was. I was living the dream. I was there for 3 nights, not 30 days, but
So
I would
you were living
cheerfully have.
Juliet's life to research it.
Yeah, yeah. I literally had to lead the life of my heroine in order to make sure every detail was correct. So it was a tiny, tiny little apartment, but it had the most beautiful wallpaper and a huge chandelier. which is ridiculous and so Parisian. Like, yeah, let's put a chandelier in this garret, and beautiful beams, and the kitchen was minute. I mean, you couldn't have even cut your baguette up on the work surface. You'd have had to have chopped it in half first.
Oh Lord.
Because, no room for cook, because Parisians don't really cook. They go out or they buy stuff in, and the bath as well, that was under a very slanting ceiling, and I don't know how I got in and out of it really, but I'm glad there wasn't a hidden camera.
Well, I'm 4'11", I probably wouldn't have had as many issues.
Oh my goodness me, it was, yeah, tiny and tucked under. Oh, hilarious.
That's the thing, I think that shows the difference in many ways between our lifestyle, the UK lifestyle, and the Parisian or the more urban
Yes,
lifestyle in
city.
France in
Yeah.
is that they spend far more of their time outside the home.
Yeah, definitely. And that is what I mean. I had a look, there was a little writing desk in front of the window waiting for me when I got there. Amazingly, it was kind of
Oh, wonderful.
it was bizarre. It was just so perfect. But yeah, mostly I just was out and about, you know, discovering Paris for myself.
And it is a beautiful city.
It's fantastic. I mean, there's so much. It's art, it's music, it's food, it's wine, it's fashion, it's so many things. And attitude, just that Parisian attitude, and every corner you turn around there's a story, and amazing people, just sort of, you just want to know who they are and what they're up to and why they're there and why are they arguing and why are they with each other, and in a much more dramatic and interesting and visual way than London,
Yeah,
because
they are far more expressive.
clothes
That's one thing.
the
I
clothes
went there I went there for a trip on my own, and I spent every evening and every morning when I had my breakfast in a little cafe round the corner from the hotel that I was staying in, even though it had a lovely restaurant. I went to a beautiful little cafe and had my croissant and my coffee, and it was people watching. It's
Yeah,
fascinating.
absolutely, and you just stride along the street and think, I can remember there was just a young man sitting in the doorway of a closed down building, and he was really roughy tufty, handsome, dishevelled,
Of
gorgeous,
course.
and reading Camus, just sitting there. It's like, "Oh, you're such a cliche, but you're great." You wouldn't get that in London. You wouldn't get somebody sitting there reading, I don't know, George Orwell in a doorway.
No, I don't think
In
so.
quite the same way. And then you turn a corner and there was a man sort of in a big leather jacket with a ponytail and sunglasses, arguing with this young girl who was in a fur coat, smoking a cigarette. I mean, it was like a film. And you just think, what's going on there?
That's not weird at all. I don't need to stand here and try and listen to what they're saying.
Yeah, well, that would be impossible because I'm sure my French wouldn't have been up to it. But
Why did you pick Paris out of all of the cities? Was it because of that romanticism?
yeah, I've always loved Paris, and it was somewhere that I don't know it super well, but I know it quite well enough to know that I love it. And I think it's just one of those places where you can be whoever you want to be when you turn up there. It's sort of, you just slip into it like a fur coat itself. It's and it is romantic. That is what it's all about, isn't it? It's for
Yes,
lovers. And, as the lights go down in the evening, the dusk falls, and yeah, it's incredible. And it's
it
got,
is.
as I said, it's everything that I love: music, art, food. What's not to like? I mean, I
And
know
it
that goes on in other cities, but in a way, and I do speak a bit of French, so I I find it easier to integrate there than I probably would in Italy or Berlin. So
I think that's one of the things that is I mean, au pairs are obviously not something that is so common for the everyday person. We had an au pair when I was growing up.
yeah,
We definitely did not have any money. It was purely for my mum and dad both worked full time, 3 young children,
easiest
and
way.
yeah, it was the easiest way. They had someone come over. Funnily enough, the person who I au paired for as a teenager au paired for us when I was a child.
Oh, amazing.
And she came over 3 summers when I was a child as well. because she was training to be a teacher and she wanted to learn more English.
So you didn't you weren't horrid to her?
No, she used to crochet, toys for our Amanda Jane dolls.
Oh,
It was wonderful.
I bet she's got
But
lovely memories too.
but it's one of those things that you don't hear so much about families having au pairs or even teenage girls going to foreign countries as au pairs anymore.
No, well, I don't know. Yeah, because I suppose my kids are older now, so they would and they were all boys, so I don't. Although I have had friends who've had male au pairs, so it's not impossible. Um, but yes, it was definitely a lot of my friends were. I wasn't ever one, but a lot of my friends were, and it's just kind of how you got to know a country and got to speak the language. You know,
Oh,
it is
absolutely.
total immersion, right?
Yeah, yeah, there's no way around that because obviously the children you're looking after don't necessarily have very much of a grasp of any other language apart from their own.
Yeah.
So you are kind of thrown in at the deep end. And that was the one thing that was very obvious with Juliet when she moved into Jean-Louis and Corinne's house,
Mm,
was that she was far more confident in her ability, but at the same time aware that she didn't have as much.
yes. Yeah, no, I think it is. And also looking after people's children is quite scary, isn't it?
I've got
It's quite
scars.
have you? Oh, dear.
Yes, the young boy, I've actually got scars all
Oh, what,
across my
literally,
middle
not
finger.
mental ones? Oh my
Yeah, no, physical scars.
god. Oh, wow.
He
Oh,
bit me
blimey.
he bit me, drew blood and ripped skin, yes, so
Ooh, ooh.
I have physical scars.
Oh, not good. Crikey. Oh, well, I think Juliet managed to avoid, yes, being bitten, but, it's
She
still
did have mental scars, though.
yeah, and it's tricky navigating somebody else's family as well, you know, you don't know what the sort of family rules are and the family traditions and the family habits, you
Their
know.
family dynamic was very complicated.
Yeah. Well, Corinne had just had a baby, but being French, she was just like super cool and fabulous, but was obviously suffering and not admitting it. And I thought that was quite an interesting, and also at the time, so she, without giving too much away, suffered a bit of postnatal depression, and at the time that was something that wasn't really recognised or talked about, or you know, not something that you had admitted to ever, because it just wasn't on people's radar.
No,
You
you
have,
can't
you know,
cope with a baby? Why?
there's a bit of baby blues, they'd call it, but you'd be expected to get over it by week 3, you know, you were allowed a bit of snivelling for a couple of weeks, and then that was it. You had to just carry on your life.
And, of course, I mean, there was that she did get attached to the children,
Yeah, as
but
you
she
would, I
wasn't
guess.
given enough of a chance to really get her feet under the table, and maybe that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Yes, it did cause a lot of disruption for her, and she felt mortified when she
Mm.
went home, but given everything that was going on in the house, it probably wasn't the healthiest environment for her to be in either.
No, I guess not. So yes, and I guess that's why she goes back to kind of set the record straight a little bit.
Yeah, as I said, I loved that. I loved the fact that she sat there and I'm going back, I'm going to do this, and she did everything that she said she was going to,
Yeah,
but she also faced her past demons, I
yeah,
suppose.
yeah, very much so. Which, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think she surprises herself. Actually, I think she was sort of slightly fantasizing about it, and then the opportunity presented itself, and she just thought, right, right, mate.
But I mean, at any age, it takes courage to up sticks and just move somewhere else for however long you're going to go.
Oh, certainly. I mean, you know, I have a secret dream of living in Paris, um, but obviously Brexit's stopped that. I mean, I could for a few months, 90 days. 90 days in Paris, I would be allowed. But yes, I really would love that to sort of, and you know, that's what I had a taste of when I went over and kind of had that little apartment. I thought I can do this. This is great. I'm not sure how the dog would fit in though. I do have a small dog, but they like their dogs. They're small
They
dogs.
do indeed.
maybe.
I think they're probably far more accommodating than a lot of places over here are when it comes to animals.
Possibly, she's just a tiny bit too big to fit into a handbag, but we'll see.
Yes, and obviously the one thing that we haven't touched on is Olivier.
Oh, yes, the French heartthrob. Yeah.
And even when he's older, he still sounds enchanting.
Well, you've gotta make these heroes attractive in books.
We do indeed.
You don't wanna yeah, so he was fun to write, really fun to write, and it's that kind of whole thing of, that first beautiful boy that you fall in love with and all the traits. I mean, it's really weird. The minute I gave him a yellow cashmere scarf, he just came to life. I don't know, he just it's really writing's a weird thing, you know? It's funny how characters just sort of slot into place when you just give them a few little characteristics, and that scarf of Olivier's that clearly his mother had bought it, his very chic ballerina mother had bought it, and it's obviously cashmere, and that just kind of summed him up straight away, but it's what Juliet kind of fell for.
He had a lan, didn't he?
Yes,
That's the
he
perfect
did,
word
and
for
then
Olivier.
yes, he did. He had that sort of cool, sort of slightly aloof, pretty boy, Parisian chic thing
But he
going.
never lost it either,
No.
even after all those years. I mean, I think he became more of my perfect man
Oh, wow.
when he was older,
Oh. Oh,
sitting in that bookshop.
yes. Yes. Well, there we are. I know. I did I did go on French Tinder while I was over there
Oh
just
god.
just to have a look, to see if there just out of curiosity, just research, just to see if there were any Olivier-esque, um, potential dates, but there weren't.
I imagine there were plenty sitting in cafes, smoking Gaulois, drinking coffee, and reading Camus or
Yeah, there
Sartre or something else.
it's not bad, Parisian Tinder, I'll say that, but I didn't follow it up. I was just sort of, you know,
Research.
browsing, window
There's
shopping.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with research.
Lèche vitrine, they call it, window shopping, window looking.
That's the thing. I mean, I loved his character and the way that it was almost as though no time had passed, even though obviously we knew it had. There
Yes.
was still that spark. And the same as there was still that friendship, that bond between Natalie and Juliet. It was as though time had almost concertinaed.
Yes, exactly. I just wanted to reflect those really intense, friendships and relationships that you have at that sort of, in your late teens, early 20s, when
Yeah.
you're really drawn to somebody that has the same interests as you, but you also learn from each other. And I really love that part of the book where they're kind of sharing books and films and music and food and, just sort of showing each other about life. And I guess that sort of brought them together so much that they were able to replicate it when they were older, and share their experiences and still have adventures together. Yeah.
Because I mean, both Olivier and Juliet had gone through divorces, though
Mm.
Olivier sounded far less pleasant than hers did.
I mean, I can't just reflect perfect divorces endlessly. So
It'd be
his
nice.
was a little more disruptive, I suppose. So he was also a little bit more wary, I think. He was not quite so. He was a bit battle scarred, I think. So she
But
had to work at it.
but then that made it far more worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just loved the way that all of their relationships were reflected because there were so many you could almost see the strings tying her with everything, her experiences, her friends, her family, even the little apartment in Paris and her home in England that she had to cut ties with because it was no longer her home.
Yes. Yeah, well, life's complicated, isn't it? And there's so many things that make us who we are, so many bits of our past and so many, regrets and hopes and then the things that we've done right that we should that we should pat ourselves on the back for, because she's a good person. No, she's a person. No, yes, and I really wanted to reflect the fact that she was happy with who she'd become. She was a great mum, she had a good career, she was a good wife, but, things changed. If I've learnt anything in life, it's that nothing stays the same for very long,
No.
right?
Oh, sometimes it would be so simple if it did, but then I don't think we'd learn anything.
No, and we have to make choices endlessly, so, yeah. Yeah, again, as I think I said before, it was really just about her picking up the reins and taking control and sort of dictating the pace of what was gonna happen next.
She made interesting choices, and this time they worked, which was nice when you see how, because obviously, as you said, we see it's in two different timelines are together, and you've got the chapters with her in the past, but the events that are in the past are tying to the next chapter and the events that
Yes.
occur. She's kind of trying to put them right as she's writing them.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was quite difficult, sort of, making sure that the stories constantly resonated throughout the book, and there was a sort of definite rhythm to it all, until they kind of dovetailed together, um, towards the end. And I think what I really wanted to reflect was, a woman who was confident, because so many women of 50 something in literature and books and at the moment are reflected as, losing the plot a bit and feeling a bit overwhelmed by life and as if they haven't got any agency. And I really wanted to show somebody that, yeah, had, little crises and wobbles, but was basically pretty strong,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Either I'm reading the wrong books, or I don't often come across a second chance that is about women that are my age. I
Oh,
mean, I've got loads of books where the main female character is in her 30s or her late 20s or her late 30s even. I
yeah.
turn 50 next February. But you don't often find a romance where the heroine is in her 50s,
I think there's a few more coming out now. I think women of that age are really, really fascinating.
where they've had a
And
lot of life experience.
they've had a lot of life experience. They've hopefully made all of their mistakes, and they've got choice. And they're operating on different level of priorities. I think it's very much more about them now, what they want, and having fun, actually, having a good time and not taking any crap from anybody and making it all on their terms. So
Yeah,
it's, yeah, really interesting dynamic.
that's it with Juliet. Her children have grown up, they've left home. Her
Mm,
husband and her have realized that their relationship is no longer where they wanted it, where it was 15, 20 years ago. And she's now going, right, this is my second chance. And that's what I love about it. It is her, she's gone, I'm going to live again. And I've got all of this time ahead of me. I'm going to look upon it as my moment to do everything for myself.
mm. Yeah, and I think she does do that, and I think that wisdom and experience and confidence means, yeah, you can make mistakes, but you're not going to make such big ones. I don't think you'll take risks, but it's not all going to fall apart because you know when to draw the line, and you know when somebody's messing you about. All of those things, you've learned a lot, so
Yeah.
hopefully it's a better experience.
I mean, I think if you take anything from this book, it's that the second time around, she does everything the way she wishes, the way it could have been done had she not been so young.
Yes, exactly. So it's a happy ending.
I like happy endings.
Yes,
But we're
exactly.
not gonna say exactly what the happy ending
No,
is,
it's
nor
not it's not sugary, it's just
no.
satisfying, hopefully.
I mean, I think a sugary ending is one where it's, you know, that they're going to go off into the sunset together, but you also have those questions, well, what happens in 5 years' time? Whereas with this one, you know, she's looking to the future with the knowledge that she already has behind her.
Yeah.
So she's not naive,
No, no, no. And she still doesn't know what's going to happen. It's just that she's set the scene for herself. And
and
you,
she's confident that whatever it has ahead of her, she's in charge.
mm, exactly,
I
exactly.
like that she's in charge. I really do. As I said, I admire her for the fact that she stands up for herself this time, and she confronts all of the things that she didn't feel confident or secure enough to confront the last time she was in Paris.
Exactly. And again, it's about getting the balance right. Because although she's confident and in charge, I didn't want to make her sort of overbearing and terrifying. She's still very human and still very kind and still sort of questions herself. So she's not like this sort of charging into battle person.
No,
She's just much happier about speaking up and saying what she wants.
but that's the thing. I mean, the calmer, almost the lovely side of her comes across obviously when things happen back in England with her family, and
Yes.
she immediately steps into the fray and immediately goes and helps when she didn't actually have to any longer. She still steps up and says, "Yeah, I'll do this," and drops everything for for her ex-husband.
Yeah, no, she's a good person and she's got her priorities right and she's happy. You know, she's never going to be compromised. She follows her heart and her head in a really good. You know, it's always a balance, isn't it? I always think life's a sort of mixture of head, heart, and gut. And if you can get those speaking to each other, I think y- you've got it cracked. And I think that's what Juliet manages. You know, she knows what's right logically with her brain. She knows what she feels passionate about, but she also can sort of get the vibe with her stomach. You know, if things are going wrong, she's like, "Oh, this doesn't
No,
feel good. This doesn't feel right." And yeah, so that's my recipe for life. Really, is getting those three things in sync.
which is a very good recipe. It's
Yeah,
practical, but
not
not.
always possible.
No, but that's it though, isn't it? I think that that's one of the things that everybody has to learn,
Yeah.
and obviously she has learned.
And you can only learn it from experience. I mean, you can't sort of be told, "Oh, follow your heart," or "Listen to your gut," or you can't. You have to learn by making mistakes.
Can you imagine how disastrous it would be if everybody did always immediately follow their heart?
Well, yeah, exactly. But you just kind of get you kind of get, oh, okay. So when I did that, that didn't work out. So okay, why? You have to analyze things. I think.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. So, with these would you ever revisit these characters? I mean, obviously, Natalie's
oh
story is
gosh,
still.
to be told, that would be
Yes.
interesting, wouldn't it? I never say never. I mean, I'd love to go back to Paris. So maybe it's through them, but meeting some new characters, or oh, I don't know, a little Parisian wedding, a second wedding that might be fun. Who knows? Oh, you've got me thinking now.
You could always revisit Hugo and Charlotte as adults.
Oh yes, the children. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Um, I'm sure there's room. I'm sure there's room. Well, you know, I mean, how many series of Emily in Paris, right?
3, I
Yeah,
think?
there's another one coming. So they've managed to, you know, I'm sure if they can do it, I can do it. I'm also I'm also obsessed with that. Have you ever watched the Paris Agency on Netflix about the Parisian estate agents, family of estate agents? It's a real. They're real people. And
No, the last I think I watched, 10% or
oh,
Corporate
oh yeah,
Agent.
yeah, yeah. Oh my, it's amazing. I
Yes,
loved that.
fantastic.
Absolutely loved it. Oh no, so the Paris, I think it's called the Paris Agency or the Parisian Agency. Yeah, they do very, very, very high end houses, house sales, and they're all gorgeous. There's four boys, I think, and Papa, and a very fabulous mother. And
Well, that's what
yeah,
Jean-Louis is, an estate agent,
yes.
isn't he?
Oh, I wonder if that's where I got the idea. I don't know.
He's a
um,
very charming estate agent who knows how to use his charm.
Yes, exactly. So so yeah, that was just fun to watch for all of the gorgeous Parisian houses, and
Yes.
bit of research there.
Yeah, I did a cruise along the Seine
Oh, did
when I
you?
was in Paris, and you get to see all of the houses along the Seine as well as the Baccalaureate and everything else, and oh, wow, the houses are just incredible. Because all you see is the deck and the bit that goes down with their, so they've got their yacht or their
Oh, yeah,
ship, their boat,
pulled up
and
outside
yeah, and
casually.
it's incredible.
Wow, I don't think no, I've never been on a boat trip on the Seine, actually.
It was a big mistake as I get quite,
Oh,
seasick.
oh, right.
Mount Air is not my friend, but
Ooh,
it
ooh.
was it was a fantastic cruise.
Next time I'll give that a go. Definitely.
Definitely. I can't even remember. I think I got it as part of a package with my train ticket.
Oh, there's no shortage of offers on that front.
Absolutely not, but it's one of those, as you said, it's the Parisian houses all the way along. They are incredible, the architecture, the design, and they are just so grand.
So yeah, I know. Probably a little bit out of reach. One can dream.
One can, well, maybe they'll be on Airbnb.
Oh, yes, there is that. Yeah, that's just such a great way of getting in.
There you go. I just want to do a quick tour of this one.
Glimpse
Actually,
of another life.
absolutely. But it is, I think Paris is one of those places that I think we're always going to romanticize to a degree,
I guess so, and there is an underbelly, as there is in any city. There's a lot of homeless. There's a lot of tension.
especially
But I
now.
think that's what. Yeah, yeah, especially now. Yeah, with the well, look at the Bataclan and all. There's been it's a very it can be very hot.
Yes,
Things can be going on, um, and I think that gives it an edge, which I also love. It isn't just like Emily in Paris and all sort of gorgeous frocks and glitzy restaurants. There is
that's the
another side.
surface.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really important to experience both of those things and sort of step out of the very obvious.
Oh, definitely. I
Yeah.
think that is something that obviously Juliet does get a small chance to see living there rather than
Mm.
visiting.
And I think it's only polite, really, to make sure that you understand how a city works and how it's, you know, what people really are all about.
Definitely.
Um, mm,
I like the fact that it is Paris. I mean, I've been there, and I think anybody who's been there knows there are certain elements of the city that are a little bit, as you said, darker. There is the underbelly, but at the same time, as a tourist, you tend to overlook that bit for the artists who are painting on by the walls of the Seine. By the walls of the Seine. You've got obviously the great big square in front of Notre Dame with all the cafes, and cafe culture is incredible there. That's one very, very good reason to go. Far better than here.
absolutely. And yes, the Place de Tetre near Montmartre and the Sacré Coeur, it's heaving with opportunities to have your money taken from you legitimately, but
Yes.
overcharged.
Stress that bit.
But I think what's great now about the internet is you can really research where you're going, and find really interesting places, and know you know what the dangers are, what to watch out for, but also to be just a bit more experimental and not go for the obvious.
Yeah,
So I did a lot of that. There's a lot of amazing Parisian travel blogs, where you can just find the really cool little, neighborhood restaurant that isn't the touristy one.
but
So I
also
think,
getting that balance between what occurred in the late 80s, early 90s and today, because
mm.
obviously you were writing with the 2 timelines.
Yeah, yeah. So I had
That bit was a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, I had been to Paris at that time. So I had a great friend who was half French who had a flat. So I used to go and stay with her. So I kind of, um, just remembered what it was like. And that bit where she gets her wallet stolen at the Gare du Nord
Yeah.
literally happened to me. That
Oh,
is word for word what happened to me. Turned up, went to get my metro tickets, and looked down, and that's it. Purse gone.
oh no.
Yeah, so I was stuck there for not very long, 4 or 5 days, but without any money. And in those
Oh,
days, there was no way of getting any money. You couldn't. I don't know. That was it. You had no money.
you couldn't just
Sent off.
phone the bank on your mobile and
No,
stop your card.
no, 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 no. So yeah, I can remember that. Remember. Um, yeah, I mean, I was staying with a friend, so obviously I didn't starve, but yeah, so that was that was a lesson learned.
That's it though. I mean, do you take a lot of what you've learned in life and put it into your characters and give your characters those particular qualities, or do you create them as you said with Olivier, the minute he had the yellow scarf, he had a character, or his
It's
character was started.
Yeah, it's a kind of a mixture. I mean, obviously, my life experiences have a huge influence on what I write, but it's a kind of layering process. It's mixed in with stuff other people have told me, books I've read, movies I've watched, and my imagination. So it really is. I can't necessarily say how a scene is created. It really is a sort of it's a cocktail, if you like, of all of those things. And I don't know, creativity is a really weird thing. It's very hard to measure, and it's very hard to know where ideas come from and why a yellow scarf would work. And I'm sure probably back in the day, I saw some lovely, gorgeous boy who had a yellow scarf on, and it's probably in my database somewhere, and I've pulled him out. Pale, pale duckling yellow.
Though he doesn't know it, he is now on
Yeah,
paper
exactly. So
forever.
it's a sort of cannibalization almost. It's like being a magpie picking up little bits here and there and then building up a picture.
That's nice though, the fact that these little tiny little things can be sitting there and grow like a pearl in an oyster.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You've got it. A little bit of grit and then it all comes into something, hopefully something beautiful at the end of
That's
it.
what I always find incredible. Every writer has a different way of creating their characters and their story, and the way that their plot develops is so different.
Well, I have to say it's different every time as well. I mean, I've done 23 books now, and I don't think my process is exactly the same every time. I know how I work to a certain extent, and I know what my strengths are, and I know what my weaknesses are, but I don't have a tried and tested formula that works because every book's got to be different. So you can't just do the same thing again. You've got to get a whole different set of characters, a whole different story, and a whole different set of dynamics, and a whole different setting. So you are really starting from scratch every time, and always terrifying, but also exciting. Um, and yeah, it's never easy.
Are you already planning your next book?
I finished the next book, but I can't
Oh,
tell you
wow.
anything about it yet. And then I'm thinking about the one after that. So, well, I've nearly finished this one. I'm sort of on the final draft, hopefully, before it goes to copy edits.
Oh, wow. How
Um,
long does it normally take you to write a book, or does that also differ depending
ah,
on
that differs. I mean, I write a book a year, so I suppose I spend the biggest part of that time on the first draft. But it is a draft process, so then that gets delivered, and it's sort of not rough, but I know that it's not perfect when I send it in. I know that there's holes and I know that there's inconsistencies and I know there's bits that could be much better. But I kind of need a fresh set of eyes because I'm writing under pressure within that schedule.
of
I
course?
don't have time to perfect it before I send it in. I'd rather have that other set of eyes on earlier in the process so I can be more confident about the second draft.
So they can highlight any plot holes or
Yeah, or something that they really don't think's working. Because you have to take so much into consideration nowadays, of things that people might be sensitive to or not like, or yeah. So you have to be much more aware, I think. Um,
So do you find it harder now than when you started? Because obviously your first book was published in I want to say 2002?
I think it was 2002. Yeah, I think you could get away with a lot more. I go back and reread my earlier books and think, "Oh, couldn't get away with that. Couldn't let that person," everybody behaved really quite badly. So, yeah, there's much more of a firm hand at the helm, I think. Um, you have to be much more conscious of not upsetting anybody, or not, if people are behaving badly, then they have to be bad people almost, you know.
There's no redemption arc.
Not so much. I don't know. Again, it's about balance, but just being aware while you're writing that if somebody's going to get up to no good, they're going to be judged. Definitely.
Then I suppose in a way there are certain things that we were far more lax about earlier on than we are now.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's why, for example, Jean-Louis in the book, I had to think very carefully about how to sort of redeem him by the end, because times were different, and I don't want to give too much away, but
No,
I didn't want to just make him a bad person, but obviously he
it
was
wasn't nice.
bit out of order.
Yeah,
So yeah, but I wanted him back in the story in the present day, and not to just be a villain, a pantomime villain. Um, yeah,
but then by giving Juliet her strength, you confronted what
yeah,
he'd done through her eyes rather than by vindicating him, really.
yeah, and I think we're okay with him in the end, just about.
Yeah, because he gets his comeuppance.
Mm, mm, mm.
He's not redeemed so much as certain perspectives are changed, I suppose.
Yes, exactly.
It has to be the tactful way of saying it.
Yes, I don't want to give too much away, but
No, definitely not. But it's one of the I think it's one of those books, and I'm looking forward to finding out more about your next one.
oh well, yeah. As soon as I can say something, I will let you know. And
I'll keep my finger on that email.
yeah, yeah. It shouldn't be too. Yeah,
Definitely.
I just want to get it right before I start talking about it. It's anyway.
It's one of those things. I think sometimes you have to be quite protective before you let something out into the world for fear, well, especially if it's gonna change,
Yeah, and I just want to be confident about it. And I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
which is always good. Well, that's the thing. I mean, 30 Days in Paris was fantastic. It
Oh,
was
you're kind.
I
Thank you.
as I said, I love finding books that are about characters my age because there aren't as many as I'd like there to be.
Well, I think yeah, I think, as I said, I think there's more people of my age writing about this time of life. Um, yeah, because we had all the. I don't like to use the word chick lit, but that is what it was called at the time.
It's
That
now
that's
isn't it now called contemporary romance or contemporary
who knows.
rom-com,
I
and
don't like pigeonholing either, really, but
it's difficult.
all those women have grown up now. That they were writing about, so they're all this age. And there are still stories to be told, very much so.
Absolutely, which is great because I started reading what was chick lit back in my 20s, I think, and have carried on. I've got loads of it on my shelves.
I think I saw today. Yeah, I think Bridget Jones is 25 years old today. The book, not the
Oh,
character.
wow. I was
Yeah.
gonna say if she's 25 years old,
Yeah,
then
yeah, no,
she's doing very
I
well.
think I'm
Actually,
right.
no, she's aged really badly.
Yeah, I think so, yeah, so but obviously, they've revisited her.
They have
Uh,
indeed, but it's one of those things I think that everybody has a genre that they will go back to in comfort, and this
mm.
is probably mine.
Oh, good, we need you.
There used to be far more of not a stigma, but people would, I think because of what it was referred to, they would look down their noses at it far more than they do now.
Yeah, I think, I know that my books are not existential in any way. That I'm not trying to say something deep and profound, but I do think I do think you can learn a lot from this kind of book, and so many women have written reviews on Amazon and said, "Oh my God, I'm going to do this now," and it's quite empowering. So I think it is really important to
Oh,
have. I
absolutely.
think I think they're much more of commercial women's fiction is a much more accurate reflection of what happens in life than any thriller. You know, thrillers are just mostly you're not going to get stabbed. Mostly that kind of stuff is you're not going to have a psychopathic neighbor who's going to kidnap you. So I think they are, they're much more a true reflection of what's going on in most people's lives.
Yeah, I think the
Which
most
is,
psychopathic thing my neighbour does is vacuum at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning.
yeah, that's quite annoying.
But that's it. I don't think they're going to be, arriving
No,
on my doorstep with a knife or a gun at any time
no, no,
soon.
exactly. So yeah, we're writing the truth. That's what we're writing.
And experience too.
Yeah, relatable stuff. I don't, that's a much overused word, but
Yeah.
very often people say to me, "Oh my God, that happened to me," or yeah, it,
I think it's underestimated.
well, that's when you know that you're reflecting people's lives back at them, but also taking them on a little bit of a journey and saying, "Well, this is how it could be."
Yes. I don't think that, I mean, there are certain things that you would love to happen. I mean, everyone would probably love to go to Paris and meet an Olivier,
Yeah, I mean, I know that is not within everybody's. You've
but
got to have a dream, though.
and also it doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
No, and you can have a sort of a slightly watered down your own version of that. I'm writing it, but I'm not living it. I did live it for three days, all of 3 days, but there was no Olivier involved. But so it's about little things like that, just thinking, okay, I might not be able to have that, but I could do this.
Yeah,
Or I could go and buy a red
exactly.
lipstick. Actually, yes, a friend of mine said, "You made me go and buy a red lipstick." Because at the beginning of the book,
Yes,
Juliet puts on a Yves Saint Laurent red lipstick. And a, a friend of mine said, I had to go and I had to go buy a Yves Saint Laurent red lipstick. And that's great. So that's kind of how fun is that and
that's
how great is
inspiring, and if it inspires somebody to take a trip to Paris
it?
or Rome or Venice or somewhere else just to experience something new, then
Mm, mm,
that's amazing.
mm. So yes, Eurostars all booked out now.
They should hire you to do their publicity.
Yes.
And next time we're in Florence. I love the idea of travel far more than packing the suitcase and getting on the plane.
Yeah, that is always a bit of a but then
Yes,
once you're there, the
I just need to get a
possibilities
new
are endless.
passport.
Oh, right, yeah, maybe sort that out.
Absolutely. But it's been fantastic to chat with you about this because
Oh,
it's actually made me revisit my time in Paris, even though it was short. In my perspective, well, it was very very short, but I did travel on my own, so it's just made me want to go back.
do it. You
It's
get your
it's
passport sorted and get on that train.
yeah, it's just such a fantastic location. It's also made me revisit my time as a teenager in Austria.
Oh, yeah, well, I can't help you with that.
Flying on a hinky little plane from Vienna to Klagenfurt
Wow.
and, watching as they drove a tank onto the lake next to the
Oh,
school to test that the ice was thick enough for
I
ice
was gonna
skating in the
say, I
winter.
guess there was ice, right?
Yes, there was ice, but it was an experience in itself, so it's lovely to revisit that kind of thing, and I think that's what this book does. It
Oh,
encourages you to revisit.
good. Good, good, good. Well, it was fun to write, I have to say. It really was.
Yes, I look forward to the next one and to finding out what the next one is about.
You will be the first one of the first to know.
Fantastic. Where can people find you and obviously more information about the books that you've written?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram as Veronica Henry author and also Facebook as that. And on Twitter, Veronica underscore Henry, I think. I've got a website, veronicahenry.co.uk. Where else? Hmm. Amazon has got all my books on it. So if
Yeah,
a
I will link the
a back
pages
list.
in the note.
Yeah, yeah. So all the usual platforms, I guess. Not TikTok. I'm on TikTok, but I don't do TikToks.
But it's been fantastic to talk to you. It's been
Thank you so much
lovely
for
to
having me.
my pleasure, honestly. It's been wonderful to talk about teenage years and Paris. I've
Yeah,
really got to go back.
what a combo. You must. Let me know.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again ever so much for coming on, and I look forward to hearing more about your next book.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you for listening, and thank you again to my guest, the author Veronica Henry. Her latest book, 30 Days in Paris, is out now, published by Orion Books. It's a great novel about second chances in lots of ways, so I will post the links to where you can find it below. If you like what you hear, why not share it with your friends and family? And please post a star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of the other podcatchers where you listen, because it really does help. You can follow me on Twitter at being_bookish, on Instagram and Threads as Being Bookish Pod, and on TikTok you'll find my videos under Being Bookish Reviews, and I am sort of getting better at doing that. Or you can check out my website for the podcast back catalogue and full written book reviews at beingbookish.co.uk. Well, I've got a lot to get ready for next week, and another new book is calling me because I've had a few delivered. So until next time, this is me saying farewell.